All right, now that we have our character, let's go ahead and start working on the eyes. So what we want to happen is we want the eyeballs to look side to side, up and down, and we need Duik to rig that up for us. So we have a few kind of housekeeping things to do before we can get that started. So let's go ahead and get started on that. We have these layers right here, everything labeled eye. Anything that's not eye, let's go ahead and shy those away for now. So I'm going to select all of this, deselect my eye layers, and shy everything. So now I just have my eye layers showing, everything's still here, it's just hidden. And I want to duplicate eye right and eye left. I'll just Control C, Control V, or Command C, Command V if you're on a Mac. And I'm going to move those so that they are above my pupil layer. So now she should look a little possessed. I'll press enter on the keyboard. So if you select it and press enter or return on a Mac, that lets you go right into being able to edit the text. And I want to call this eye right matte. And same for eye 2. Let's rename that eye left matte. All right, let's go into this toggle switches and modes tool. It's down here at the bottom. And so I'm just going to click that and it'll open up a few different options over here. And what we want is the left eye pupil, eye pupil left, to be matted to eye left matte. So we're going to find that in our drop down, eye left matte. And same for pupil right, we want eye right matte. And so what that's saying is no matter where, let's lock these layers, the matte layers. So no matter where I move my pupil layer, it's no longer going to be visible if it's not over the pixels that make up the matte layers. All right, so that's the first part that we need to do. Let's go ahead and I'm going to unlock these and parent them. So I need to go back to toggle switches and modes. Let's parent the matte layers to the eye layers. So I'm just going to drag the pick whip down to the eye layers, not the pupil layers, right? All right, so now this is what you should be seeing in your layer stack. And let's go ahead and open Duik now. So if you don't have that open in the moment, you can click on Window and choose duikangela.jsx. It should bring this up. It might take just a second. And so what we need to do now is click on connectors. Connectors, links and constraints. And we're going to go to connectors, and I'm not clicking the word connector, I'm clicking the gear next to it, the settings. So click connector options. It should bring up this section. And we need to make a 2D slider. So we're going to make our first 2D slider. And it pulls it in like this. I'm going to grab both of these and move it over. Let's leave it at the top actually. I'm going to click on the space of the box. Don't click on the dot, the blue dot, click on the box or somewhere inside of it. That way we can move it to the side like this. And I'm going to press enter and rename this eye look. And same for this one, eye look. Oops. So I have this, and it's going to control the direction that her eyes are looking based on the direction that this blue dot is inside of the box. So we only need one because I only want her to look in the same direction. If you wanted her to look in different directions, be cross-eyed, be more focused on things, you would want 2 of these sliders. You would set it up the same way, but we're just going to do one for now. I want to scale mine down, so I'm going to scale it by holding shift, and that's going to lock it uniformly. I don't need it to be super big, and I'm just going to put it kind of close to her head. I'm going to add a text layer, so we'll click on the little T icon, drag out a text box. I'm going to type eye look, give it a little bit more room, and I'm going to center it. move it over. And this is the important part. So at this point, if we were to render out our video, this text is going to be showing, the box will not. It's non-renderable. So we want to make the text also not show. So I'll right click on the layer and I will call that a guide layer, and it's going to put the little hashtag, the little crisscross on it, and that means that it's kind of a non-printing object, a non-showing object when you render it. I want to shrink this down just a bit, just so it's about the size of my box. And let's go ahead and get started on rigging up our character's eyes. So I'm going to lock the eye look layer text and the control background. So that means I can't click on the box anymore and I can't click on the text. The only thing I can click on is just the joystick, the controller. Alrighty, so now we need to open up the pupil left position by pressing P on the keyboard with that selected. I'll click on pupil right, press P on my keyboard, and it's going to bring up just the position controls. So for this first frame, let's zoom in all the way, and I want to use up these 3 frames, and that's basically going to tell Duik that the position on the left is the left direction that it's going to be looking on with the eyes. The first frame is going to be over here. The last frame is going to be when the slider is over here. So anywhere on the right side, anywhere on the left side. You can use up more frames if you want to. It'll transition between it more slowly. We're only going to be using 3 for now. I'm going to right click on my position here and click separate dimensions. So now I have an X position and a Y position. They're not next to each other anymore. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. So now I have 2 separated positions. I'm going to set my time slider to 1 frame and click the stopwatch. So now there's a frame where she's at her starting point in the middle. And I did that for the X position and for the Y position. Now for the X position, actually for all of these, let's go ahead and we want to use Duik to zero out this layer. So if we go back to Duik, we should have in the links and constraints menu this add 0 icon. So go ahead and click on that. And it's going to say that this position that it's at now is the 0. And what it did is add in 2 guide layers down at the bottom and parented my my current layers to that guide. We don't need to worry about that for now. We just need the eyes to be going the way that we want them to. So we have them set up. We have the positions zeroed out. So now that's going to let us do less math. So all we need to do is move over our time slider to 0. And we want to move the pupils just using the X position. And we want to get where she's looking as left as we need her to be looking for our animation. So for me, I think that looks like probably -3. We can round that off. And we'll put the right eye at -3 as well. And so now if we were to scrub through, she looks to her right. Now we want to do the same thing on frame 2, but the other direction. And since we zeroed out our layers, or our controllers, we can just press 3, +3, and +3, and she will look to the right. And so now she should just look back and forth. If you wanted more control over it, you might set these to 5 and 3, but we don't want that for right now. So we're going to leave it as it is. I'm going to select both of these. I want to press F9 on my keyboard, or you can right click and choose Easy Ease, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. That just controls the way that it animates in between these. I'm going to select all of my keyframes again, and I'm going to go back into Duik. And we don't have the connector selected anymore, so let's go ahead and click on the connector options again, and we need to pick our controller. So we'll click on pick control and choose our controller, pick control. And now we have our settings for that control. So now when I click on my X position, I'll hold Control or Command and click both of those, and make sure that this is set to axis X, and we'll just click on Properties, and these will turn red. That means that no longer is our time slider controlling these values, our controller is controlling the values. And so now that's animatable. We can change the position by pressing P, and we can have her look any direction that we want her to, as long as it's left or right. So we can move that over, we can move that just a hair that way, we can move it over all the way this way, and now it's going to follow the positions that I set in my controller's keyframes. So I'm going to undo all of that. I'll press P on the keyboard to close that, and let's do the same thing with the Y position now. Oops, went too far back. There we go. So now with the Y position, we want to do the same thing. Remember that left on the time slider is going to be up for the 2D slider, the joystick. So we want to go to 0, 0, and we'll move our pupils up as high as we want her to be looking in this animation. So that seems probably good to me. We can round that off to -2, I think. -2. And we'll do the +2 over here. +2 and +2. So that's about as far as I want her looking up and down. We'll set these to easy ease. And now we can select our Y position on our controls. I want to change the axis to match it, so Y over here, and then I'll click on Properties. So now the time slider shouldn't control anything, it should be all the controller's control. And make sure, do a test and make sure that the eyes are looking in the direction you expected them to. If they weren't, you might have to undo. And let's go ahead and move on. Now we should have the eyes looking around.